Welcome to the Rock the Stage Show. Each week, international media expert Rich Bontrager has in-depth and personal conversations with celebrities, top leaders, authors, speakers, and media professionals. Now, from the Rock the Stage studios, here's your host, the Trigger, Rich Bontrager.
Welcome back, Rock the Stage Show, Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We're here once again for another amazing show to help you better shine on camera, shine on stage, but of course, help your business grow as well. We want you to have amazing, outstanding businesses, but part of that is by having outstanding guests to come on and talk about what they do. But before we get into our conversation tonight, we have to remind you, we are expanding Rock the Stage. We're now on Roku TV, Amazon Fire, IPTV, Bravehearts TV Network, and of course on YouTube. But right now, if you're watching this, we have a watch party and a live chat going on. So thanks for being with us on YouTube here tonight. But also share us, like us, follow us on those other network channels, and come and join us for all of our different shows coming up. So tonight we are going to get into the topic that fuels so many thriving businesses. It's also about personal brand growth as well. We're going to talk about innovation. And let's be honest, it's a world that's moving way too fast, and staying ahead is so hard. We're chasing. And innovation is one of those things we're chasing. But, it's not just about the new shiny object. So many people are chasing the shiny object of innovation. It's really about solving the right problems, asking the right questions, and building a culture where creativity is no longer optional. It's actually essential to your existence. And if you're thinking this is going to be a typical conversation about innovation, you're wrong. This is going to be a fun conversation tonight. My guest tonight has presented his perspectives on innovation to audiences in over 50 different countries. He started his work in innovation over 25 years ago. He created and led a 20,000 person innovation practice for consulting. He's the author of 7 different books on innovation. And in 2015, he was inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame of the National Speakers Association. And by the way, when he is not on stage speaking about innovation, he enjoys dabbling in magic and making the impossible possible. Welcome to Rock the Stage Show tonight. Welcome, Stephen Shapiro, and there he is.
Hello, good to see you.
Back in your power purple, man. I don't think I've ever seen you not in your purple.
I try to wear purple as much as possible, especially in business settings. It's the color of royalty and it's the color of innovation, and it feels very appropriate.
Okay, the color of innovation. That's one I've never heard before.
It is. Actually, what's interesting is when I worked on one of my books, I was trying to figure out what to do for the cover, and we decided, because I love purple, we'd do purple as the cover. But I'm like, do other books use purple? There was only 3 business books prior to my book coming out, my Invisible Solutions book, that had a purple cover. One was Purple Cow, which was obviously about being a little different. The other one was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which really isn't a business book, a little different. Yep. And then the last one was Harvard Business Review's articles on innovation. And I thought, boom, we nailed it.
Wow. Okay, there we go. So we're into it already here. This is great. By the way, I love your tagline I found on you, the innovation instigator. How cool is that?
I like to cause problems. That's my goal, because if everything is status quo, you don't get a lot of innovation. So have to have fun, have to challenge people, but do it in a playful way.
So let me give a little definition of innovation first, because so many people have different ideas, and I'm going to see if you agree or disagree with this particular version of this. Innovation is the process of introducing something new, whether it's a new idea, method, product, or service, that creates value. It delivers not just the creation of something new, but also its successful implementation and adoption by those using it. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good in terms of a process. So look, the outcome is value. In fact, I use one word typically to define innovation, which is relevance. And it's not a sexy word, but what we need to do is recognize the fact that as the world changes, we need to adapt to it. And therefore, in order to stay relevant, we need to adapt. And so innovation, though, at the end of the day, is really about producing long-term value. A lot of people get very caught up in the creativity side of things. the novelty, the newness. That's not it. It doesn't necessarily have to be new. It just has to introduce value potentially in a new way.
So a lot of people, like I said in the introduction, they're chasing forever the thing, whatever it is. Would you agree that we're wasting too much time on that instead of the value purpose of the innovation?
100%, and it's worse now than it's ever been. I would say that, I mean, if you think back to the pandemic in 2020, the word pivot was the word of the year. And what we've used is pivot as shorthand for changing our direction, changing our strategy, going in a different way. And the problem is there's no grounding in that. And then you add on economic challenges, and then you add on unpredictability in terms of supply chain. And then you layer on top of that AI, and now everything is a bright, shiny object. We're chasing the opportunities. We're chasing the challenges. We're running away from whatever might be difficult, as opposed to saying, how do we build a solid foundation for our business that actually gives us some level of stability? So it's not about the change, but in some cases, the big question is to ask, what shouldn't change inside of our organization? What stands the test of time? What do we do better than anyone else that creates the greatest amount of value? And if we focus there, maybe we'll get long-term value as opposed to chasing the next bright, shiny object.
So how many companies do you think have done that, where they ripped everything apart, put it back together, and the one great thing they were really hitting the home run, they scrapped for innovation's sake, and they killed themselves? How many do you think have done it?
Yeah, I'm not sure necessarily they've scrapped it, but I think it's actually been buried. So they have this great golden nugget, and then they start wasting their energy on all these other opportunities, which are really just distractions, and then the gold gets covered. And so to me, the big question is always not what do we do that's different, what's new, but rather what stands the test of time, what doesn't change, and what should we stop doing? And when you get that level of clarity, first of all, everybody inside the organization knows exactly what they need to do, but also you then start unleashing much greater impact, because a lot of times we start focusing on things that don't create enough long-term differentiated impact. And that to me is what it comes down to, is we need to innovate where we differentiate. But if we don't have clarity on what differentiates us, and differentiators aren't just what is different today, but what's going to stand the test of time that creates the greatest value, we focus on that, then we've got clarity for the organization and our investment strategies become very clear.
So what in the world got you involved with innovation 25 years ago? I mean, people are drawn to things, but what drew you to innovation?
Yeah, and I'm thinking it's probably closer to over 30 years ago. So what happened was, I'm an engineer by background. So I've got this industrial engineering background, and my work when I joined Accenture, which was really where I went right out of college, was all around manufacturing productivity. And so a lot of my work at Accenture in the early days was, how do we optimize not just manufacturing, but how do we optimize all business processes? And I became one of the leaders of our what was called business process reengineering practice, which was all around how do we basically take a company's processes and reconfigure them to make them more efficient. But what happened is I discovered that as we made companies more efficient, they decided to downsize the workforce. And I was working on this one project, and basically I just discovered the negative impact that my efficiency work was having on people's lives. And I thought, you know what? I love consulting. I love Accenture. I want to keep on going with what I'm doing, but I can't be responsible for one lost job. And so I got this idea. Well, what's the opposite of shrinking and efficiency? It's growth. Now, 30 years ago, innovation wasn't a word used in business other than product development. But I thought, how do we create innovation as a cultural attribute of an organization to help it grow? And fortunately, with the help of a number of other people, we went from 0 to 20,000 people in 9 months. We created this thriving innovation practice there. And basically everything I've been focused on is around how do we help companies grow and thrive rather than shrink and become more efficient as a way of trying to get rid of people.
Now, again, you've been doing this over 25, 30 years, but it seems like you've re-energized yourself, refocused yourself on this innovation side. But I think the coolest thing you've got going for you is your personality poker, which we're going to dive deeply into tonight. But where did that come out of? Because now you've gamified some of these personality profiles to help them get some of the answers that we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, so personality poker didn't start off as a poker game. It started off as the most boring spreadsheet on the planet. But when I was at Accenture, I realized we have this belief that some people are innovative and then there's everyone else. There's the people who sit on the high mountains wearing long white robes and they hand down the gospel of the future to everyone else. And I realized, no, that's not it. We all contribute to innovation, just in different ways. And so I had this boring spreadsheet that I developed 27 years ago, and it was boring, but it worked. And then when I left Accenture and I started speaking, that spreadsheet was still boring, not very good for a speech. So I wanted to find a way of creating something more exciting. And I happened to be playing blackjack at the Venetian in Las Vegas. And I realized there's 4 steps to the innovation process. There are 4 suits and a deck of cards.
Yep.
There's 4 different innovation styles in my assessment. And so I just went back and I took a deck of cards, grabbed a Sharpie, started taking the words from my assessment, put them on the cards, played around with them, and then realized, well, we've got not just suits, but we've got colors and numbers. How do we leverage those? Partnered with 2 universities. And basically we ended up with this incredibly powerful deck of 52 cards that can do so much. It always blows me away 20 years after I've developed it.
Well, and the cool thing is, as keynote speaker and Hall of Fame speaker that you are, you've also got your crowd now, not just sitting and listening to you. They're getting up, they're moving around, they're interacting, they're laughing, they're joking, they're learning. What an experiential thing you also brought to the stage.
Yeah, it gets very easy. Like as an innovation person, so always focus on what's next. So I developed this, as we said, 2 decades ago, but then it was the next book and the next book and the next book and the next speech. And so personality poker always was there, but in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wrote my last book, Pivotal, the essence of Pivotal is basically to figure out what you do better than anyone else that creates the greatest amount of value in the words of the customer that will stand the test of time because it's relevant and that it will be difficult for others to replicate. And I looked at my business and I realized I was doing exactly the opposite of what the book said, which was don't focus on what's next, focus on what's now. So I looked at my business and said, personality poker. My clients love it 100% of the time. 100% of the people in the audience go gaga for it.
Right.
I love it because I've always wanted to be a game show host since I was growing up. I get to be a game show host. And I think now, given everything's gone digital, whether it's AI, whether it's Zoom, when we have an in-person experience where people are actually holding cards, trading cards, listening to music, it's just the energy in the room goes absolutely crazy.
Yes. So let's get into some of the meat and potatoes of this. And I saw there's a quote, because so often diversity is discussed, but then people are put in silos at work. Part of this innovation is collaboration, working together, building your team, which every leader wants. We all go to conferences for it. But there's also this thing about, do opposites attract or do opposites not attract within the business corporation world?
Yeah. In life, I mean, everybody's heard that expression, opposites attract, but actually there's irrefutable scientific evidence that opposites don't attract, they detract. Yeah. They repel. We want to be with people who are similar to us. And so what ends up happening is we do surround ourselves who have common interests, common personalities, common beliefs. And look, in our personal lives, that's great because it makes things easy and efficient and enjoyable. But in business, that's what kills innovation because we just get more of the same. I always joke, if you only hire people who fit the mold, eventually the organization will grow mold because you're going to have these stale ideas. It's the same thing we've always had. And so there's 2 things. So we need diversity of experience, diversity of personality. But at the same time, it's not just bringing a bunch of people different together, but it's then also working out the process for them to collaborate. Right. Because if we bring diverse groups together, they actually are extremely inefficient if we don't give them the right tools.
So from Star Trek, Mr. Spock, all these many years ago, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Would you say that applies to business as well? We should be listening to the ancient Vulcan?
Sure, why not? I think there's always wisdom in, there's an expression, wisdom in crowds, but I'm not a big fan of that term because there's a lot of times when crowds are not wise at all for a whole variety of reasons. But if we become purposeful and clear about how we make connections across industries, across disciplines, across functions, across companies, and across personalities, and we know how to blend them together, we can come up with some absolutely fascinating innovations. And from an organizational perspective, we just look at it from diverse personalities. Now we're able to create things we weren't able to create before and create impact in a way that wasn't possible previously.
So let's get into the game. I love personality profiles. I love this stuff. I love the business, trying to get people to work together. But basically, you get 5 cards, and you want the 5 cards to match how you see yourself. Not like you want to be, but like you see yourself. And if you don't have the right combination, that's where the trading, the playing, the interaction begins, right?
Yeah, exactly. So just so people know what it is, cards. And then on the other side, you'll notice that there are, in addition to the suits and colors and numbers, like in a regular deck of cards, there's words. So this one says methodical, this one says compassionate, this one says analytical, and this one says my favorite, because that's me, scattered. And so what happens is we take decks of cards, we shuffle them up, and we deal out 5 random cards to every person in the audience. And then we go through 2 rounds of trading. And in the first round of trading, everybody stands up. We blast Lady Gaga's Poker Face through the speakers, and people start trading. And the goal is to get 5 cards where the words best describe how you see yourself.
Right.
And we go through this process about 6.5 minutes. And then there's a point where people still have cards they can't get rid of that they want to trade. So we do a second round of trading, and that's built around the game we all learned as kids, which is 52 card pickup. And we literally throw hundreds. And I've done this. I did this with a group of 1,000 people in Las Vegas, and we threw thousands and thousands of cards all over the ballroom floor. People are on their hands and knees. And this is a chance for them to improve their hand. So if there's a card they don't like, they throw it down, pick up another one. But it's also a chance to gift cards. And this is my favorite part.
Yeah.
Is if you see a word that reminds you of somebody else who's in the room with you, you pick it up and you give it to them. So when you're done, you have 5 cards that represent how you see yourself. And then you have gift cards from others that represent how the world perceives you. And then we go through the process of interpreting the suits, the colors, and the numbers. They all have meaning. And when we do this with smaller groups, there's some absolutely ridiculously powerful ways we do this. But that's the one, if I'm doing a speech, it's just interactive. There's music, like I said, Lady Gaga during that second round of trading during the 52 card pickup. We have Kenny Rogers, the gambler, and Viva Las Vegas. and we just do so much. So it's like people standing, kneeling, moving around the room. It's just in 45 minutes to 60 minutes, we can do so much. It's crazy.
Now, then teams can take their decks back, go back to the office, and see who plays together and what combinations. Ultimately, that's what you want. You want that collaboration, the team, to break down the barriers, the differences. How hard is that for them to take the next step and apply it now?
It happens almost instantaneously. And here's the reason why is that the main point of personality poker, unlike most other personality tests, is who you are not is more important than who you are. So 95% of the people in the audience, when they look at the 5 cards they have in their hand, they are missing one of the suits, 95%. So what people need to understand is the suit you don't have in your hand, which represents your opposite style, the suit that you are sort of your blind spot. This is the one that you need. And so I tell people, when you leave here today, stop hanging around with the people who are the same as you. Whatever suit you don't have in your hand, or suits. I mean, there are some people who are missing 2 suits, 3 suits. Those are the people you need on your team. You need to appreciate them and their contribution. They may drive you crazy. I always say the person you like the least is the person you need the most. The person who's not in your hand probably has a personality style that's going to drive you crazy, but they're the ones you need. And so it almost like happens instantaneously when people leave. It's unbelievable. I've never had an hour impact organizations as much as just a card game like this. It's just crazy.
So we talked about it a little bit, but now the leaders got to create the culture where that innovation and collaboration is essential. How do leaders actually make that ethos change from siloed to collaboration?
So sometimes companies will, like after I did my latest speech, he bought 2,000 decks for everybody in the organization because he wants people to, even if they don't play the cards,
Yeah.
they just have to remember, oh, like you leave with your cards, put them on your desk, put them so you can see them. Have other people see them if you're working in the office. If people walk in and they get to see your hand, now they know how to have a conversation with you. They know how you make decisions. And it also helps that individual remind themselves of who they need to collaborate with. But it's more than just collaboration. This really is specifically about innovation, which also makes it a little different than many other assessments.
So that's what I was going to go back to innovation here, because what's some of the biggest myths or barriers for innovation, for leaders to say, let's move and have real progress again?
Yeah, I mean, you said this earlier, which is innovation isn't about ideas. It is actually about identifying the most important, biggest opportunities for an organization, and then figuring out how do we bring those to fruition.
Yeah.
And so what happens is a lot of people collapse innovation and creativity. And they think, okay, well, creativity, it's about a lot of ideas, and it's me sitting on the ground looking at the clouds and freeing my mind. And it's not that. We've got a lot of ideas. The problem is most of them stink.
Yeah.
So we don't need more ideas. We need solutions to important problems, important opportunities. And so the deck is built around the 4 steps of the innovation process. So the first step would be the domain of the spades.
Okay.
And the spades are the people who like facts and data. They want to know, basically, they like Excel spreadsheets. They may be a little more skeptical than others, but they need to know what matters most. They're going to be great because it's data driven. They're going to be really great at figuring out what are the biggest opportunities. It's not just, I feel like this is an opportunity. I've got the data to support this as an opportunity. Once we do that, now we move into the stage of the diamonds. And the diamonds are the creative ones. They like novelty. They're the ones who want to develop new concepts, new ideas, have new experiences. So when it comes to developing solutions, the Spock quote that you were talking about, diamonds are multifaceted. They've had a lot of experiences. So they almost naturally bring together a lot of different perspectives.
Yep.
Next step after that would be plan the work and work the plan. That's the clubs. They're the ones who are very methodical. Now, there's numbers on these, and I'm not getting into that right now, but some clubs are really good at the structure and the process, and others are really good at the results. And then, as you would imagine, the last part of this is the hearts, and the hearts are really good at engaging the hearts of minds of people and getting people going. So there's lots of different combinations, but that's the key, is to recognize innovation starts with the opportunity, not the idea.
So with that said, who's going to be the one to call the action? Who's the one that's going to say, let's actually go do this instead of talking about it forever? So many organizations talk, but they never go.
I mean, it should be everybody. I mean, that's the reality is it shouldn't be. Look, innovation is never the role of a department or a person.
Okay, good.
It should be everybody's responsibility, but we're all going to contribute to innovation in different ways. And so we need to understand that. And we also need to understand that we need to collaborate. So like when I was at Accenture 30 years ago, this is really where I had the big aha, is I had this one project that had a ridiculously large budget. It was $30 million. And in personality poker, I'm a diamond heart, which means that I like new experiences. I like novelty. I like things that are different. And at the same time, I like people. So that's my combination. And for this $30 million project, I brought on John. John was exactly the same. And we had this great, fun project. People were developing new creative ideas. That was the diamond. We had people enjoying it, which was the heart. And unfortunately, we produced nothing. And it was the biggest waste of $30 million because we didn't have the clubs. So the next project, my budget was cut from 30 million to 6 million. I didn't have my choice of co-leader. I was given Ray, who was this anal retentive club. He was in my face, drove me crazy. We didn't like each other in the beginning, but I knew I needed him. And the bottom line is, when we figured out how to collaborate together, we worked out, how do I have the flexibility to do what I need to do from a creative perspective? And how can I enable him to be directive and structured in a way that's going to allow him to feel satisfied? And what we produced was magical. And it was because of our collaboration, not because of me, because I had a much bigger budget and I failed miserably before.
When I work with teams, they pick up very quickly. I'm the creative. I'm popping off. I'm dreaming. I'm Walt Disney-esque. And I've learned over the years, I have to have the other person to say, here's the details, here's the spreadsheet, here's the check marks as we go that direction, because I love to dream. Are there personalities that do have that yin and the yang, or do we have more of the imbalance, the fighting where we can't blend it together? Which do you find more often after playing poker?
So the key points of personality poker is you as an individual need to play to your strong suit. You need to do what you do better than anyone else. Focus there, not worry about the other pieces. It's not about correcting your weaknesses. It's about collaborating with people who have your blind spots, my clubs, as their strong suit. The next thing is to play with a full deck, which means that we need to have teams where we have all four suits in one form or another at different times. And then we want to deal out the work. And that basically means that everybody doesn't do everything. There are some people who are great at defining the problem and getting the data. There are some people great at the solutions. And we want to actually allow them to do what they do best, but then we need to shuffle the deck, which creates that creative tension at certain points in the process that get that next level of creativity that's going to help us get the best solutions.
So let me go to this one, because we're fast-paced, we're high-tech right now. What do we do about burnout with innovation, and that we are trying to push the next limit, create the new thing, but burnout's a real thing when you get in that mentality of do it, do it, do it. How do you avoid that?
Yeah, so I'll give you 3 thoughts on that. Hopefully I'll remember all 3 by the time I get done. First one is stop doing more with less. You want to do less and get more. That's the first thing. It's about leverage. So again, coming back to my pivotal book, knowing what we shouldn't be doing is quite often more important than knowing what we should be doing.
Right.
The second thing is each person does need to play to their strong suit. One of the reasons why people burn out is because they're doing work that doesn't energize them. And there's a difference between strengths and your strong suit. They sound the same, but they're not. A strength is something you're good at. A strong suit is something which is innate. It's just who you are. It gives you energy. Even though you might be good at other things, they might rob you of your energy. And getting clarity on what energizes you helps you basically not burn out, because you're doing what you love while everyone else is doing what they love. And then the third thing that I think creates burnout, especially right now, is a lack of clarity. And that comes back to the pivotal book, which is all around, if we're going to innovate where we differentiate, we need to get clear on our differentiator is, and our differentiator doesn't change significantly over time. Our differentiators used to create new offerings, new capabilities, but the differentiator, our core, our capabilities that truly set us apart, those don't change, but what we create with it might change. And that lack of clarity that's happening right now is, I think, why people are burning out. So those are the 3 things that I've found that are most powerful.
Now, you just touched on yourself with your own personal story, but I'm going to go back to it a second, because the relationship between failure and innovation I find very interesting. Some of the greatest people, Walt Disney, who I love, bankruptcy 3 times. Had to learn he's not a money man. I'm a creative man. Let my brother take care of the money. And then he succeeded. What's the correlation between innovation and that failure side? Because you just said yourself, big budget, didn't quite work out for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of people sort of over glorify failure. It's like, if we're not failing, we're not innovating. And that's not my perspective. My perspective is actually failure is maybe an inevitable consequence of innovation, but it's not the goal. I have some companies who say, we're going to measure failure rates as a good thing. It's like, no, you're measuring the wrong thing.
Failure upward, right? Fail forward.
Yeah, fail forward. But it's like, why fail? Experiment. And there's a big difference between experimenting and failing. Experimenting means we create a small, scalable experiment. It could be something that we develop in an hour, a week, for $100. And we test it out. Now, the thing with experiments is we might disprove our hypothesis. We thought this would be a really cool new product. Instead of spending millions of dollars developing it and failing in the market, we're going to spend $100. We're going to do a prototype or a prototype and test it out.
Mhm.
Now, if we find out people don't want it, that's not a failure. That is a successful experiment. Experiments have 4 outcomes. We run the experiment. It proves that it's a good idea. Let's scale it. Let's make it larger. Let's invest in it more. Second outcome, we run the experiment. Not quite right, but there's an essence. There's parts of it that are good. Let's move it in a different direction and do a small experiment around that. The third one is people don't want it. It's a bad idea. We kill it. That's not failure. Where the failure occurs is when we run the experiment, we convince ourselves that the data tells us this is a good idea. When it's not, we keep on investing in it. We spend millions of dollars. We go bankrupt, and now we don't have anything to show for it. I think we've over-glorified the power of learning through failure rather than saying, what can we learn through experimentation?
For those of us old enough to remember, I can remember New Coke.
Yes.
Boy, they thought that was going to be really good.
Yes, exactly.
Now, I know this may not be your forte, but I'm kind of curious. Look through the crystal ball a little bit. We're innovating, creating so much right now, Stephen. What do you think are the new innovations around the corner that we're going to see pop up? Is there anything that you can say, watch that trend, watch that thing? Is there something kind of unique that you see coming?
I wouldn't call it unique, and I don't know if my perspective is that unusual, but I think my hypothesis is the more digital we become, the more analog human beings will want.
Thank you. Repeat that, please.
Yeah, so as everything starts going online, so like after Zoom, like during the pandemic, everything was on Zoom. We had this built up desire for in-person meetings.
Yes.
Now what's happening is games are digital. There's a resurgence of board games in a way that there's never been. I think that even the physicality of, music has always been through, MP3s, but now there's a resurgence of vinyl, but there's also now, I was told just the other day, there's a resurgence of cassette tapes are coming back. I think we crave something that we can touch, which is why I love personality pokers. They're touching cards. They're sharing cards. They take home cards. I think there's going to be a big resurgence of the physical world and the human element. I think that what people are now going to start craving is human originality.
I think you're dead on, but I've been talking about more. The AI is not your brand. You are your brand. You are the face. And the human connection side is something I think we will always crave. And I think we've swung a little bit too far. And I think you're right. We're going to go back.
Like, I love AI. I use it all the time for a ridiculous number of things. But I then also figure out, what's the analog version of that? What am I creating that's uniquely mine, that my differentiator, that's going to stand the test of time, that can't be replaced by AI, that can't be replaced by another speaker or an innovation expert, something that the world craves and needs. And if I keep on focusing on that, then I have that clarity in my business, which I think so many organizations are lacking right now.
Yeah.
And I think once you have that clarity, you talk about burnout. I was always focused on, I realized every 2 years in my 25-year business, I would come out with either a new book or a new product or a new offering.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually was burning out without realizing it because I wasn't doubling down on what mattered. So when I went back to personality poker, and that's now my focus, doesn't mean I don't do my other work, but like almost 100% of my in-office mental energy is focused on personality poker. And it's not about staying still, though. It's about going deep.
Stephen Shapiro, we're going to bring up your website here. What are they going to find when they scan the QR code and learn more about you and personality poker?
Yeah, I think the thing that people will learn about me is, in addition to being a magician, I'm going to grab this right now.
Oh, yeah, please.
I am a musician. So this is actually one of my favorite hobbies is...
Can you play us something? Can you give us a little rip?
I have to get it assembled. It takes a little while. I wasn't prepared for that. But I find if we do creative endeavors outside of the workplace, whether it's magic or music for me, it really helps. Like, I feel energized, not just because I have the clarity around personality poker, but I've gotten gone back into music and playing every day and just tapping into some kind of inner joy or whatever it is that it really sings to me, because I played the saxophone since I was 10 years old, and then it sat in its case for 30 years.
Right.
And so people see I like magic, I like music, and I think all those things contribute. We're not just our work life, but our personal lives contribute to our ability to innovate and see the world differently.
So I'm gonna have a little fun with you right now. We're gonna do a little rapid fire, just fun. See what responses. So who's the one historical innovator that you would like to sit down and have dinner with?
Oh, I guess he was definitely an innovator. I loved Richard Feynman. So Nobel Prize winning physicist, part of the Manhattan Project. I mean, just probably one of the most brilliant people ever. And there's a book which I recommend to everyone. If you want my favorite book on creativity, it is Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. And it's written by Richard Feynman. And he basically tells these stories about how he had ants in his apartment. And instead of just getting out the raid and killing them, he wanted to do some experiments. So he started with chalk, or one of the things he discovered is that ants like to walk around a chalk line. And so he just basically started drawing lines out the door, and the ants would just go out the door. So he's a master experimenter.
So 2 more real short ones here. When you hit the creative wall, this is you personally, what do you do to get unstuck from that creative wall that's not happening?
The key thing for me is to take my foot off the accelerator and put my foot on the brake and pause. So sometimes it's sitting in the hot tub and trying to just relax my mind a little bit. I mean, I think just quieting that busy mind is so important. Yeah.
Final question for Stephen Shapiro here today is: the future belongs to those who blank.
The future belongs to those who learn. I think, we have to be willing to have this balance between stability and agility. This balance between a foundation and flexibility. And I think what happens is we think we have to change all the time, but then we're not efficient. But sometimes, and we don't have that foundation, but we can't just stay where we are. And so when we get that right balance, I think that's really the key, is recognizing the world's changing, but we don't necessarily have to change. We need to create things that help us move in the direction of where the world's going. And that to me is about learning and play and all those other things that are going to help us be more relevant in the future. So come back to the very first question. To me, innovation is about relevance. It's like, how do we create the greatest value for the world in a way that energizes us? And as long as we are doing that, AI tools can be incredible. Are they going to replace some jobs? Yeah. But tools from the beginning of time have replaced jobs. The ones who embrace that change and build on it based on what their personal superpowers are, they're the ones who will thrive in the future.
Stephen Shapiro, it's always fun to have you around. I always get so much information. My head blows up. It's great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time to be on Rock the Stage tonight.
This was awesome. I really just enjoyed the conversation so much, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Stephen Shapiro on Rock the Stage. And again, innovation. Maybe it's not what you thought it was. Maybe it's something more. Maybe it's something you need to dabble with. And I'm telling you, I've seen Stephen on stage, Hall of Fame speaker. If you get the chance to go see him speak, or if you get a chance to play personality poker, please join in with him. Check him out. Go to that website and learn more about Stephen Shapiro. And that's going to do it for our edition of Rock the Stage Show tonight. We're going to be back again next week with another outstanding guest. Deep dive into a great unscripted conversation. We want to help you grow, shine, innovate, and be the best that you can be in whatever endeavor you're involved with. And remember, find us now on Roku TV, Amazon Fire, IPTV, and of course, the Bravehearts TV network. Hey, until next time, I'm the Trigger, Rich Bontrager. Come back next week for another edition of Rock the Stage Show.